Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into a really big topic, one that touches all of us, the spectrum of mind, from well-being to manipulation. So, what's the plan for this deep dive?
Well, we've got these fantastic sources, excerpts really, from a work called The Spectrum of Mind. And our job is to pull out the absolute key insights for you. Basically, your shortcut to getting up to speed on, human psychology, mental health, and even the darker side of how people influence each other. We're tackling it in two main parts. First, we'll lay down a solid foundation, what psychology and mental health actually are. Then we'll shift gears and get into dark psychology, how manipulation works, and really importantly, how you can see it coming and protect yourself.
And really, understanding both ends of the spectrum, the well-being and the manipulation, is just so crucial for getting by in the world today. It gives you a much deeper awareness, not just about yourself, but about the dynamics playing out around you.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Psychology. Most people have a rough idea, right? But our sources really stress it's a science, studying the mind, behavior. Exactly. It's about scientifically figuring out how we think, how we feel, how we act, both on our own and, when we're in groups. It's huge because, the mind is incredibly complex.
It really is. And the sources break it down through different lenses, like clinical psychology.
Yeah.
That sounds like the practical side.
That's right. It's diagnosing and treating mental health issues, sort of the frontline support.
Okay. And then cognitive psychology, that's more internal.
Yeah, that zooms in on the mental machinery, memory, perception, how you solve problems, learn things, all that stuff.
Got it. And developmental psychology tracks us over time.
From infancy right through to old age, how we grow and change mentally.
Fascinating. And social psychology looks at group influence.
How other people and our social settings shape us. It's powerful stuff.
And finally, neuropsychology, the brain behavior link.
Precisely. How the actual brain hardware connects to what we do, think, and feel.
Okay, so we understand the mind structure a bit better. Let's talk about its health. What does mental health really mean? It's more than just not being sick, right?
Oh, absolutely. Mental health is your overall emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It fundamentally affects how you think, feel, act, how you cope with stress, connect with people, make decisions. It's everything, really. And the deep dive points to three key pillars of good mental health. First, emotional well-being, basically. Handling your emotions in a healthy way. Then there's psychological resilience that's huge, bouncing back when things get tough.
Right, resilience.
And third, social functioning. So maintaining good relationships, being part of a community.
Makes sense. And when these things are off kilter, that's when we might see common issues like depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, PTSD, things mentioned in the sources.
Exactly. And what's really interesting or maybe concerning are the modern challenges highlighted. Stigma is still a massive barrier stopping people from getting help.
Yeah, that persists.
And then you've got social media, the digital overload. It can really crank up anxiety, impact self-worth. Plus, bigger things like pandemics, conflicts, they add another layer of stress globally. You probably see echoes of this in your own life or with people you know.
For sure, those pressures feel very real. But it's not all doom and gloom. The sources offer solutions, right? Ways to maintain mental health.
Definitely. Things like therapy and counseling are crucial. Medication, if a doctor thinks it's needed. But also lifestyle things. Regular exercise, decent sleep, they make a huge difference.
And mindfulness, meditation.
Yes, those practices help manage stress. And critically, having good support systems, friends, family, community, these aren't just nice to haves, they're vital tools.
Okay, so we have this picture of the mind and keeping it healthy. Now, let's take that turn into, the darker side, dark psychology. What exactly are we talking about here?
It sounds ominous, doesn't it? But essentially, dark psychology is about using psychological principles, but for manipulation, for coercion, often causing harm. It's studying how people influence, exploit, and control others for their own ends.
Right, and the sources mention something called the dark triad.
They do. It's a cluster of personality traits often found in manipulative individuals. There's Machiavellianism, think, strategic, calculating, ends justify the means thinking.
Okay, very calculating.
Then narcissism, that huge sense of self-importance, entitlement, and a real lack of empathy for others. And finally, psychopathy. This involves callousness, a lack of guilt or remorse, often impulsivity, and exploiting others without a second thought. When you combine these traits, you get someone potentially very manipulative.
Wow, okay, so that's the who, but how do they do it? What are the actual tactics people might see?
The tactics. Our sources list quite a few common ones. Gaslighting is a big one.
I've heard that term a lot.
It's where someone deliberately makes you doubt your own reality, your memory, even your sanity, like saying, you're just imagining things. That never happened when you know it did. It's incredibly destabilizing.
Yeah, that sounds awful. What else?
Love bombing. This is showering someone with intense affection and attention right at the start. It feels amazing, but the goal is often to create dependency fast before pulling back or starting to control.
Ah, so it's a setup.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
Then there's guilt tripping. Using obligation or past favors to make you feel bad so you'll do what they want. That classic line, after all I've done for you.
Familiar.
Triangulation is another. Bringing a third person into a dynamic to manipulate one or both parties, like, well, Sarah agrees with me, you're being totally unreasonable. It isolates you or pits people against each other.
Sneaky.
Very. The silent treatment, too. That's not just needing space, it's deliberately withdrawing communication or affection as punishment. It weaponizes connection.
Right. And gaslighting by proxy. What's that?
That's getting other people to reinforce the manipulator's false narrative to the victim. So it's not just one person telling you you're wrong, it's several, making it harder to trust yourself.
Gosh, that's intense. The sources also mention NLP, neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes, and this is nuanced. NLP has many legitimate uses: therapy, communication, coaching. But the sources point out it can be used unethically. It involves using specific language patterns, mirroring body language, things like that, to influence someone's thoughts or feelings, sometimes subconsciously. In the wrong hands, it's a subtle manipulation tool.
Okay, quite a toolbox there.
Yeah.
Why? Why do people actually do these things?
Good question. The sources suggest several reasons. Sometimes it's purely about gaining power and control. Other times it's to dodge responsibility for their own mistakes or bad behavior.
So deflection.
Exactly. Or simply exploiting others for personal gain, money, status, whatever. And sometimes it's not even fully conscious. It might be learned behavior from their past or linked to those personality disorders we mentioned, where empathy is just missing.
Okay, that makes sense, unfortunately. So the big question for everyone listening, how do you protect yourself from this stuff?
Crucial question. And the sources offer concrete strategies. First up, self-awareness, learning to trust your gut. If something feels off, pay attention. Recognize those feelings of confusion, obligation, or fear that manipulation often causes.
Tune into yourself.
Precisely. Second, boundaries. This is huge.
Yeah.
Learning to say no clearly and firmly, setting limits on what behavior you'll accept from others and sticking to them.
Easier said than done sometimes, but vital.
Absolutely. Third, critical thinking. Don't just accept things at face value, especially if they seem inconsistent or manipulative. Question things. Seek outside perspectives if you need to. Trust your own judgment.
Right. Stay skeptical in a healthy way.
And finally, if you've been through a serious or prolonged manipulation, therapy is often really important. Dealing with the aftermath, rebuilding trust in yourself, a professional can really help navigate that.
That's really practical advice. Now, let's tie these threads together. We've talked about mental health and we've talked about dark psychology. How do they actually connect? How does manipulation impact mental health?
The connection is direct and often deeply damaging. Being on the receiving end of manipulation, especially over time, can significantly harm your mental well-being.
How specifically?
Well, victims often develop anxiety, depression, feelings of confusion, helplessness, worthlessness are really common. If it's ongoing abuse or manipulation, it can lead to complex PTSD, CPTSD, which has long-lasting effects.
Right.
And like we said with gaslighting, it directly attacks your sense of reality. It can make you lose trust in your own memory, your judgment. That's incredibly corrosive to mental health. And it can work the other way too sometimes. The sources suggest that individuals with certain existing mental health conditions or personality structures might be more prone to using manipulation. Maybe it's a learned coping mechanism, however maladaptive, or maybe it stems directly from their condition. It's complex.
So it's a two-way street, potentially.
Yeah.
And understanding that cycle, that interplay, is really key for listeners, isn't it? For building that resilience we talked about.
Exactly. It helps you see the patterns both in yourself and in others.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, we've journeyed across quite a spectrum. Understanding mental health principles, that's fundamental for our own well-being, for building a strong foundation. And then understanding the tactics of dark psychology. That's not about becoming paranoid, but about becoming aware. equipping yourself for self-protection in a world where, let's face it, these dynamics exist.
Absolutely. And that combined understanding, knowing about mental wellness and the potential for manipulation, it really is, as the sources state, crucial for building resilience and navigating a complex world. Something to really reflect on how you nurture your own mind while also staying aware of the influences around you. It's an ongoing process of awareness.